Hi children, welcome back to our history class. And in the last video you have learnt about February Revolution, and I told you as a result of the February Revolution king abdicated his throne. Those things in the last video we have discussed, and now today let me tell you in this video what happened after February Revolution. Let us discuss. After February, in the provisional government, army officials, landowners, and industrialists played an important role. Already I told you, when the king abdicated the throne, provisional government was set up by the soldiers and leaders of Duma and workers and other leaders. Collectively they formed a government. That government was called provisional government. And this provisional government, army officials, landowners, industrialists also included. Yes, in the provisional government we can see the role of armed officials, army officials, landowners, industrialists also played an important role. So all these people took part in the provisional government, not only the workers or the leaders of Duma or the armed officials, army officials. Besides that, here the landowners and industrialists. Landowners and industrialists also played a very important role in the provisional government. So the government is now here after February Revolution, when the king abdicated the throne. Here now the government was now being led by the provisional government. And this provisional government, in this provisional government, we can see the role of army officials, landowners, and industrialists. And these people who played a significant role, okay, after February Revolution, particularly in the provisional government. And now the restrictions here on public meetings and associations were removed. And previously a king put so many restrictions upon the agitators, but now all these restrictions upon the public meetings and associations were lifted. They were lifted. So, okay, all those things, all those restrictions were removed. Now there were no restrictions upon the public meetings, no restrictions upon the formation of associations. So the restrictions on public meetings and associations were completely removed by the provisional government. And later, while the provisional government was in existence, while they were running the government, now here a major change took place, and that is the entry of Vladimir Lenin, okay, the communist leader Vladimir Lenin, okay, yes, came to limelight. Now the Bolshevik leader Vladimir Lenin returned to Russia from exile in April 1917. Vladimir Lenin, a socialist leader who was exiled before 1917, so he was in jail after spending few years in prison. Now the Bolshevik leader Vladimir Lenin returned to Russia from his exile in April 1917. So he established a party. Already in the last videos I told you that he had established a party that was called Bolshevik Party. Okay, Lenin established a party called Bolshevik Party. Okay, and he was a pioneer of socialism in Russia. He was a pioneer of socialism in Russia. So Bolshevik leader, the party that was led by him was called Bolshevik Party, and he was the leader of that party. So Vladimir Lenin now returned to Russia from exile in April 1917. When he returned to Russia, then the government was now led by provisional government. Okay, yeah. Now Lenin felt that it was time for the Soviets to take over power. So Lenin was looking for a better opportunity to establish socialist government in Russia. Now he got, okay, better opportunity. While the provisional government was ruling Russia, Lenin felt that it was the time for the Soviets to take over power, my dears. And Lenin gave his April thesis. Okay, yes, Vladimir Lenin gave his April thesis in which he made three demands. What is April thesis? Lenin made some thesis. That means he made three demands. Lenin made three demands. Okay, and these three demands, which was termed as April thesis. These three demands that were made by Lenin were called April thesis. What were the three important demands that were made by Lenin? Please listen, okay? Look at it and listen carefully. The first demand that he made was, the first one, the war be brought to a close. Yes, Lenin, yes, demanded that the first demand, the war be brought to a close. Actually, Lenin did not want his country to fight in the First World War, but against the wishes of the people here, okay, the Russian king, Nicholas II. So he went to a war, he waged a war, and he took part in the First World War. So here the three demands that were made by Lenin were, the first one, the war be brought to a close. And he wished that the First World War to be brought to a close. It was to be, okay, brought to a close. So the war be brought to a close. That was the first demand he made. And the second one, because you know very well, my dear children, war brings a lot of destruction. War brings a lot of losses, men and material will be lost. So that is why he did not like his country to fight or participate in the First World War. That's why in the first demand he made, the war be brought to a close. And the second demand, the land be transferred to the peasants. And it was a long demand, okay, a long time demand. It is, what is that? The land be transferred to the peasants, because in those days the land was only concentrated in the hands of the rich landlords, but it was not at all accessible to the poor people. Poor people did not have land. All the land in the country was only in the hands, it was vested in the hands of the big landlords and the noble people. But now Lenin, who had demanded that land be transferred to the peasants. Who are the peasants? Poor farmers, landless agricultural laborers, poor farmers. That land which was there in the hands of the big landlords must be transferred to the poor peasants. That was his second demand, my dear. It's a legitimate demand, because in those days the land was only enjoyed by the big landlords, but the poor people did not have a single tract of land. That's why Lenin made a big demand that the land must be transferred to the poor peasants. And the third demand that he made was, all the banks be nationalized. All the banks be nationalized. The banks were working under the guidance of the king in those days, but now he demanded that all the banks be nationalized. All the banks should be run by the government only. All the banks should be nationalized. And some of the private persons, okay, let those banks run those banks. But now, according to his demand, Lenin demanded that the banks should be nationalized. Banks should be nationalized. And these are the three important demands that were made by Vladimir Lenin, my dear children. See, these three demands. The first one is the war be brought to close. Second one, the land be transferred to the peasants. And the third one, the banks be nationalized. So these three demands, which were known as commonly April thesis. And here is the picture of Vladimir Lenin, a pioneer of socialism in Russia. Lenin wanted the Bolshevik party to be renamed as the Communist Party, my dear children. Lenin wanted the Bolshevik party to be renamed as the He changed his he established the Bolshevik party, but now he wanted to change the name of his party. As a result, now the Bolshevik party renamed as the Communist Party. Okay, it was renamed as the Bolshevik party was renamed as the Communist Party. Okay, so Lenin changed the name of his Bolshevik party into Communist Party. And now the trade unions and other associations, working class associations, grew in number. So many trade unions, workers unions grew in number. So many associations were formed. So many workers associations were formed as the power of the provisional government was reduced and the Bolshevik influence grew, my dear. Whenever the power of the provisional government began to decline, began to weak, okay, the provisional government became weak. It could not run the government successfully. So slowly, okay, gradually and consequently here, the provisional government became weak and weak. So that is why, as the power of the provisional government was reduced and the Bolshevik influence grew here, when Lenin came to Russia, so his party grew stronger, and then he wanted to grab the power in Russia and he wanted to establish a communist regime in Russia. So whenever the provisional government became weak, then ultimately on the other hand, Bolshevik party or the Bolsheviks particularly became stronger and stronger. So Bolshevik influence grew stronger. And the provisional government resisted attempts by the workers and began arresting leaders. So whenever the Bolsheviks brought pressure over the provisional government, then the provisional government, what did they do? They resisted the attempts by the workers, and then they started arresting all the Bolshevik leaders, my dears, because they wanted to suppress the Bolshevik movement in Russia. So the provisional government wanted to suppress the Bolshevik movement, but the Bolsheviks became stronger and stronger. So the popular demonstrations staged by the Bolsheviks in July 1917 were sternly suppressed. Ultimately, popular demonstrations staged by the Bolsheviks in July 1917, which were sternly suppressed. Ultimately, here the provisional government tried its best to suppress the Bolshevik movement in Russia. And on the other hand, here Kerensky's government was overthrown ultimately. Already in the beginning I told you there are two important political parties. One is Bolshevik party and the other one is Kerensky. Bolshevik party's leader was Lenin and Menshevik party's leader was Kerensky. And here in this picture, look at the photograph of Kerensky, whose party's name was Menshevik party. And Menshevik party played a major role in the provisional government. Yeah, in the provisional government, this party and Kerensky played a major role. Kerensky was the leader of the provisional government, my dear. His party's name was Menshevik. His party's name was Menshevik. So the provisional government failed miserably. Yeah, the provisional government failed to meet the demands of the people because it became unpopular with people. It could not start any popular schemes or schemes for the people. It did not take care of the welfare of the people. They did not introduce any welfare measures. That is why ultimately the Menshevik party and the provisional government failed miserably. It became unpopular with people. People did not like it. So as a result, the provisional government became unpopular with the people. And it failed. Ultimately, the provisional government failed. And when it failed to give peace, because it failed to give peace, it promised to give peace to the people of Russia. But whereas, in practice, it failed miserably. The provisional government did not give peace to the people, and it did not distribute the land to the tillers or the landless laborers. It did not control industries also. So in these three aspects, here the provisional government failed okay, miserably. So it failed to give peace, it failed to distribute the land to the tiller, and it failed to control the industries, okay. And that is why, and not only that, it had neglected the welfare of the workers, because workers are more in number in Russia. There are so many factories, industrial laborers were there, but unfortunately their welfare was totally neglected by the provisional government. That is why his government, or the provisional government, became unpopular with people. So it failed to give peace, it failed to distribute the land to the tillers, and it failed to control the industries to workers. And not only that, no equal status to non-Russian nationalities. There were so many non-residential, non-Russian nationalities were there, but ultimately those non-residential, non-Russian nationalities did not get any equal status there, because they were discriminated, okay. Non-Russian nationalities were discriminated, okay. Their demands were rejected and refused by the provisional government. They were not treated equally. That is why all these are the reasons for the failure of the provisional government. So ultimately Kerensky's government was overthrown by the Bolshevik leader Lenin, my dear children. That is the end of the provisional government, okay. And in the next video, my dear children, I shall tell you about the October Revolution of 1917, okay. I will tell you the results of the October Revolution, causes of the October Revolution, and so on, okay. In the next video you shall learn more about the October Revolution. Till then, bye, my dear children. Thank you for watching.